The opulent dining hall shimmered under the glow of golden chandeliers, casting intricate patterns on the silk-draped walls. The air was thick with the scent of oud and jasmine, spices from a distant land weaving through the hushed murmurs. At the heart of this grandeur sat the Billionaire Sheikh, a figure carved from mystery and arrogance, his piercing eyes barely masking the storm within. Tonight, beneath the weight of a carefully crafted disguise, he bore the mask of vulnerability, pretending to be disabled, to unlock a truth he feared more than loneliness itself. His reluctance was palpable. Years of shallow smiles and empty promises had carved deep lines of exhaustion into his soul. Every whispered compliment and veiled attempt at charm only deepened his resolve to see behind facades. There she was, radiant, but different. Not with the coy glances he despised. Instead, her gaze held an audacity, a spark of genuine strength that unsettled his precise calculations. Her laughter broke the silence, candid and unrestrained, slicing through his armor like a warm desert breeze. "You know," she said, her voice laced with mischief, "most people need a wheelchair to hide, but you seem to hide behind one." The words landed like a challenge, teasing yet sincere. The Sheikh's stoic mask twitched, betraying a flicker of surprise. She wasn't pitying him, nor was she evading the truth. Her humor was a beacon in the suffocating formality of the night. As the servants moved silently, pouring rich pomegranate wine into crystal glasses, their eyes met, a delicate dance of power and vulnerability. "I'm not here for sympathy," he replied, voice low but steady, "but to see if what's offered beneath the surface is real." His fingers brushed the intricate embroidery of his robe, a subtle signal of the fortress he protected. She leaned forward, eyes gleaming with boldness that unsettled him further. "Then you've chosen the wrong game, Sheikh, or perhaps the right one." The room seemed to hold its breath between the exchange, the scent of amber swirling with unspoken tension. But beneath her warmth, a shadow lingered. Moments later, as she excused herself briefly, the glint in her eyes hardened. A fleeting glimpse of a secret concealed beneath layers of charm. A secret potent enough to shake even the unyielding foundations of his world. His heart, burdened with centuries of loneliness and pride, faltered. Was this genuine connection, or another illusion to fracture his carefully built empire of trust? The air thickened with questions, as the night promised revelations that neither dared to voice. Before the next secret of this dazzling emirate unfolds, quickly check if you're already part of our caravan of stories. Many destinies are yet to be forged, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. Like if this Sheikh's heart already intrigued you. Tell me in the comments, from which city are you following this saga? And what twist do you think is coming next? Your passion for these dramas is what inspires us to keep going. Thank you for being with us. The velvet curtains fluttered slightly, stirred by a breeze slipping through the half-open balcony doors. Moonlight spilled onto the marble floors, painting silver shadows where the night's quiet conspired with whispers from the past. The Billionaire Sheikh sat stoically at the edge of his vast terrace, the weight of the evening's revelations heavy on his shoulders. He had not taken his eyes off the gate since she left the dining hall. The audacity in her voice still echoed in his mind. "You hide behind a wheelchair," she had said, peeling away the layers of his carefully constructed fortress with a single phrase. She had seen through him, but not with pity. Instead, her words carried a challenge, a spark too wild to ignore. For years, he had cloaked himself in detachment, mastering the art of control in a world that demanded nothing less. Yet tonight, vulnerability unspooled beneath his skin, raw and unmasked. The way she hadn't flinched at his charade unsettled him. More than that, it stirred a yearning he refused to acknowledge aloud. The scented night air thickened with jasmine and oud, mingling with the rich tune of distant fountains. He breathed deeply, the coolness in the air tasting like forbidden hope. Behind the grandeur lay a cage built from solitude, and she was the volatile key that threatened to shatter it. Suddenly, the soft crunch of footsteps pulled his gaze from the gate. A shadow emerged, Amina. Her silhouette was framed by lantern light, delicate but unwavering. She approached with purpose, her customary charm replaced by a seriousness that demanded attention. "You didn't wait for me," she said quietly, her voice brushing his ear like a whispered secret. He remained silent, studying her profile bathed in moonlight. The firmness in her jaw mirrored the storm in his heart. "The halls felt colder when you left," he admitted in a low grunt that surprised even himself. She smiled, fleeting but genuine. "You're easier to read than you think, Sheikh. The masks you wear, they're as fragile as this night." Her eyes searched his, daring him to meet the truth she held. The air between them pulsed with unspoken confessions. He wanted to reach out, to bridge the gulf carved by years of silence. Yet pride clenched his throat, a rigid guardian demanding vigilance. "I'm not the man you imagine," he confessed at last. "Not beneath the centuries of gold and power. I've built walls so high, even I fear what lies beyond." Her breath hitched, vulnerability flickering behind her fierce gaze. "And I'm no stranger to shadows," she replied. "We both carry secrets heavier than the desert sun." A tense smile played at the corner of his lips, the first crack in his armor since their fateful meeting. She stepped closer, the scent of amber and spice enveloping their fragile sanctuary. His heart thundered in a rhythm foreign, yet intoxicating. Before more could be spoken, a sharp disturbance shattered the fragile peace. From behind the palace walls came a hurried voice, a servant, breathless and urgent. The Sheikh's brow furrowed deeply, instinct clawing at his calm facade. "What now?" he muttered. Rising with effort, the muscles in his legs protesting the motion he so often hid. Amina moved beside him without hesitation, her eyes fierce and alert. The servant approached swiftly, dropping a folded parchment into the Sheikh's hand. His fingers trembled, ever so slightly, as he broke the wax seal. The delicate script revealed a betrayal that ran deeper than mere politics. Whisper of treason that threatened his very reign. His eyes darkened, a storm unleashed beneath their golden veneer. The meticulous control he wielded slipped, replaced by a flicker of something far more dangerous: rage. "This changes everything," he said, voice cold and sharp as desert steel. Amina's face hardened, her own fears swallowed by resolve. "What must you do?" He stared into the night, where distant stars blinked indifferently. "Protect what is mine, even if it means crushing the very hearts that beat within this palace." The words hung heavy, a chilling promise cast between them. The unspoken tension thickened as the two stood side by side, their intertwined fates tightening like a noose. But beneath the urgency and wrath, the spark between them refused to dim, a fragile emblem of something uncharted and perilous. As the distant drums of the desert night seemed to quicken, the Sheikh's gaze locked once more on Amina's. The vulnerability that had plagued him melted away, replaced by a potent mixture of determination and dark intent. He reached out, fingers brushing lightly against her hand, a contact electric and forbidden. "There is more at stake than just my empire," he confessed. "There are truths here you don't yet know. Secrets I've buried beneath layers of gold and lies." Her eyes searched his, fierce and unwavering. "Then let me in, Sheikh. Let me fight beside you." The night held its breath as the palace shimmered around their fragile coalition. Their alliance, a dangerous dance of trust and deception, was forged under the silent witness of stars that had seen empires rise and fall. Suddenly, a harsh cry shattered the stillness from the corridors inside. The Sheikh's face paled. It was a warning, a signal that the shadows creeping through his world had grown bolder. Heart pounding, he released her hand and strode toward the source of the disturbance. Each step weighted with uncertainty and menace. Amina followed, without hesitation, their paths entwined by fate's cruel design. And then, as the heavy doors swung open, they were confronted by a figure cloaked in darkness, her eyes gleaming with a secret that could unravel everything they held dear. "The truth you seek," she whispered, her voice a knife slicing the night, "is darker than you ever imagined." The billionaire Sheikh's breath caught. The past had returned to claim him, and the fragile promise of tomorrow trembled on the edge of a knife. The figure cloaked in shadows slipped silently into the grand hall, eyes like twin daggers searing through the opulent dimness. The billionaire Sheikh's heart tightened, a fissure running through his iron will, when recognition flashed briefly across his gaze. Not just anyone dared invade his sanctum under the veil of night, let alone one carrying secrets that could crumble kingdoms. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice sharper than desert wind, yet laced with an undeniable edge of caution. His hand, still trembling from the servant's warning, rested on the marble railing. The woman stepped forward, a ghost from the past, with a smile both cruel and knowing. "Truths don't wait for an invitation, Sheikh," she whispered, voice slicing the air like the finest scimitar. "And neither does betrayal." Amina's breath caught beside him. Her presence was steady as granite, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of fear, a recognition of the coming storm. The Sheikh's jaw clenched, muscles taut, the weight of duty pressing down harder than ever. "What game do you think you're playing in my house?" he challenged the shadow that dared upend his fortress. "I play for stakes higher than your throne," she replied, voice dropping to a dangerous murmur. "I hold the lies that will burn your empire to ashes." The tension stretched, thick as desert heat. The opulence around them, golden tapestries, crystal chandeliers, silk-covered cushions, felt suddenly fragile, like illusions waiting to collapse under the slightest tremor. The Sheikh's eyes, sharp and piercing, scanned her face, tracing the lines hardened by years of secrets. Still, beneath that worn facade, the man saw a flicker of the woman he once believed loyal, once cherished. Now, she was the embodiment of every betrayal he feared. "Why, return now," he demanded, voice barely concealing the ache beneath. She leveled him with a look so cold it seared. "Because the game has changed, and the pieces are falling. Your allies are counting double crosses behind your back. And your empire's foundation? It's cracked, right here." Her finger tapped his chest with a weight heavier than words. A low growl rumbled in the Sheikh's throat, a tempest barely contained. Years of solitude, of feigned invincibility, now threatened to shatter with this unexpected betrayal. His hand tightened around the ornate railing until knuckles blanched. Amina stepped closer, voice a balm and a battle cry all at once. "We don't have much time. Trust isn't given, but earned. If you want to survive what's coming, you need me, this time, truly." The Sheikh's golden eyes flared. The old fortress was crumbling. Yet these words carried a sliver of a lifeline in the chaos. But trusting her, the shadow from his past, would be to gamble with fire. From deep within, a bitter doubt clawed at his mind, but it was drowned out by the raging tempest coursing through his veins. Protect what is mine, no matter the sacrifice. Suddenly, the heavy palace doors groaned open, and a figure burst into the room, young, desperate, face flushed with urgency. "Your Highness," the messenger gasped, eyes wide with terror. "There has been an attack. The southern gates, raiders, they're moving fast." The room froze. The crackling anticipation snapped into grim reality. The Sheikh's breath hitched, every instinct honed through decades, piercing the turmoil into focus. The empire he had so meticulously built was under siege, and time was slipping like sand through his fingers. Amina's hand brushed his arm, steady, unyielding, and in that touch he found a shard of clarity. "We move now," he commanded. His voice, low and commanding, echoed through the vast hall like the roar of a desert storm. As they hurried through corridors lined with ancient mosaics and polished marble, the scent of jasmine and oud, twisted with the acrid smoke, slowly creeping in from beyond the walls. The night's grandeur dissolved into chaos. The Sheikh's mind raced. Was this attack the betrayal the mysterious woman had warned about, or merely a symptom of a deeper conspiracy? The fragility of his realm was exposed, and every passing second threatened to unravel it further. Amina kept pace beside him, fierce and focused, a pillar in the storm. Yet, in her eyes, he glimpsed shadows, fears unspoken, burdens she carried alone. A warrior disguised as a delicate bloom, poised to stand or fall by his side. In the command room, lantern light flickered over strategists and guards rushing to prepare defenses. The walls seemed to close in, suffocating in their urgency and the weight of impending doom. His fingers clenched into fists, nails digging into his palms, as duty warred with the vulnerability he feared revealing. And then, a whispered voice from the depths of his past sliced through the noise, a name that tilted the world off its axis. Zara. Everyone froze. He and Amina exchanged a glance, electric with shared dread. The woman who had returned in the shadows was not just a traitor. She was a key player in the whispered rumors that had haunted the palace for months. Zara, once beloved, now shadowed in treachery. The Sheikh's heart thundered, the cold steel of betrayal pressing down like a desert gale. "Prepare the guards," he said, voice trembling yet resolute. "Find her. Bring me the truth, no matter the cost." Amina's hand found his again. This time, not a whisper, but a vow. Together they faced the gathering darkness, knowing the coming storm would test every fracture in their souls. As the first horns sounded on the battlements, a whispered secret slipped from Zara's lips. Carried by the wind, racing through the palace halls. "The throne is not all I seek. Your heart, Sheikh, is the true prize, and it is mine to claim." The night held its breath, drowning in the echo of a promise that would change everything. The flickering lanterns cast long shadows across the grand hall, their golden light faltering before the encroaching darkness that swelled within the palace walls. The tension hanging in the air was almost tangible, as if the very stones of the emirate trembled beneath the weight of the unseen threat. The billionaire Sheikh's jaw tightened, the cold steel of betrayal still stabbing sharply beneath his skin. Zara's words, their venom wrapped in silk, echoed relentlessly in his mind. His grip on the ornate railing was ironclad, knuckles whitening with the strain. Yet beneath the surface, his heart throbbed, not just with rage, but a web of tangled longing and doubt. How many times had he been deceived by the facades carved by those he once trusted? And was this shadow from his past yet another mask hiding a deeper truth? Amina stepped to his side, steady and resolute. Her dark eyes burned with a fierce loyalty that both comforted and challenged him. "We cannot afford hesitation," she whispered, her voice a silken whisper, carrying the weight of command. "This traitor has put everything we've built on the line." His gaze flicked to her, the faintest glimmer of hope kindling amidst the tempest. She was the unpredictable wild desert wind, simultaneously soothing and dangerous. But in this storm, he needed that chaos. He turned sharply as footsteps thundered through the corridors beyond. Servants and guards scurried, faces pale, the air thick with whispered rumors and the acrid scent of smoke seeping from distant fires. The once celebratory opulence of the palace was unraveling, the night exposing fissures that no tapestry of gold could conceal. "Gather the council." His voice, a low growl, sliced through the clamor. "Every ally, every blade, the Southerners advance, and there is treachery sleeping in our midst." Amina inclined her head, the faintest curve of a smile breaking her stoic facade. "I will ready the defenses and keep your back, Sheikh. Whatever comes, you will not stand alone." He turned back to the balcony, where the moonlight painted silver scars across the marble floor. The vast desert stretched endlessly beyond, a silent witness to centuries of power and pain. Within that endless expanse lay freedom, but also isolation. That was the price of his crown. "And what of Zara?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. She speaks of hearts and crowns alike. Is she here for revenge or something more insidious? Amina's eyes darkened, reflecting the shadows of the past. She wants what she believes was stolen. But her weapons are not only daggers, they are secrets, and secrets can kill faster than any sword. The Sheikh's hands clenched, the intricate patterns of his robe, a fragile armor against the storm swelling in his chest. Every breath felt like a battle, a war within himself, almost as fierce as the one looming beyond the palace gates. Suddenly, the heavy doors slammed open, and a young guard stumbled in, breathless and wide-eyed with panic. "Your Highness, the southern gates have fallen. Raiders have breached the outer walls. They surge like a sandstorm, unstoppable." The room froze, the echoes of his words hanging like a death sentence. Amina's hand found his, fingers tightening in silent solidarity. His golden eyes, sharp as the desert sun, flared with determination, tempered by dread. "Sound the alarms," he commanded, voice hardening to steel. "Call every able warrior. We will not yield." In the chaos that erupted, he caught a glimpse of the mysterious woman, Zara, lurking just beyond the doorway, her presence like a wound reopened. Her dark gaze pierced through the turmoil, a twisted smile curling her lips. Their eyes locked, a clash of empires and emotions, old and raw. "You think your fortress will save you?" she called out, voice dripping with venomous promise. "But the throne you protect is crumbling, Sheikh. The true king is the one who commands your heart. And I will claim it." Amina's breath hitched beside him, but she stood taller, unwavering. "She lies. We will bring her to justice." The Sheikh's voice was a thunderclap in the storm. Not just justice, retribution. For betrayal this deep, the cost will be blood. He turned away, moving swiftly toward the command center. The brittle peace of the night shattered, replaced by the swarm of strategy and war cries. Each step echoed with the heavy burden of a ruler whose greatest battle was not only for his empire, but for his soul. Once inside the chamber, maps glowed under lantern light, and advisors hastened to lay out defenses, eyes flicking nervously between the door and the flickering fires in the distance. The scent of jasmine had been replaced by the acrid tang of fear and smoke. He scanned the faces gathered, loyal subjects and cautious allies, wondering whose eyes hid betrayal like Zara's. Those he could not trust now might pull the dagger when the moment was darkest. His thoughts flickered to Amina, her unwavering strength and the fragile vulnerability beneath. Their tenuous alliance was now his most precious weapon against the gathering storm. "Prepare the archers," he ordered. "Seal the inner gates. No one enters or leaves without my command." The distant pounding grew louder, a relentless drum heralding doom. Yet within his chest rose a fierce resolve. The night might be dark, but beneath that dark beat, the pulse of a man who refused to break. Suddenly, a whispered word caught in the chamber's charged air, a name that sent a shiver racing down every spine. Khalid. The mention of his brother, long estranged, cast a fresh shadow. His absence had left cracks in the empire's foundation no gold could repair. Now, The question burned like desert fire. Was Khalid friend or foe? The Sheikh's eyes narrowed, every muscle taut. The night was no longer merely a battlefield. It was a labyrinth of loyalty and lies, past and present, clashing in deadly dance. Outside, the winds howled through the courtyards as figures moved like ghosts. The palace was a nest of vipers, and the Sheikh stood wary at its heart. His voice low, almost a vow, trembled with raw intensity. Prepare for war. Betrayal runs deeper than any blade, and tonight, every secret will bleed. As the first flames licked the edge of the horizon, a distant cry shattered the silence, the scream of a voice he once loved and lost, carried on a wind thick with dust and despair. The billionaire Sheikh froze, breath caught in the jagged stillness. Somewhere beyond the walls, the past came hunting, and with it, a truth that could burn everything to ashes and consume the fragile hope he dared to hold. The distant alarm echoed through the palace corridors like the cries of a wounded beast. The flickering lanterns cast uneasy shadows on the cold marble as the billionaire Sheikh marched through the winding halls, Amina close at his side, a pillar of strength amid chaos. Outside, the desert night seemed to tremble beneath the weight of impending war, the stars watching silently as empires trembled. His breath was controlled, masking the turmoil beneath his stoic exterior. The breach at the southern gates was more than an attack. It was a message carved from betrayal. Every step he took deepened the ache behind his golden eyes, a tempest of anger and grief raging within. He felt the suffocating grip of history's heavy chains, a past littered with scars trusted friends had inflicted, and a present poisoned by a traitor's whispered lies. "Tell me everything," he commanded, voice as cold as the night wind. Amina's sharp gaze swept the anxious faces of gathered commanders. The raiders came swiftly, more organized than simple bandits. Flames have swallowed parts of the outer walls. There are whispers of sabotage, secret passages opened from within. The Sheikh clenched his fists, the intricate embroidery beneath his knuckles tight and delicate as the fragile peace they fought to preserve. The scent of jasmine from earlier was now a distant memory, smothered beneath smoke and despair. Sabotage, he repeated slowly, tasting the bitter truth like dry dust on his tongue. Someone betrayed us. A murmur rose among the strategists. His mind spiraled toward Zara, the shadow that clung to every corner of this storm. Her name was a curse he could neither expel nor ignore. "I want her found," he growled. "Alive. She will answer every question." Amina nodded, the fire in her eyes matching his. "You must rest, even if for a moment." He shook his head, the exhaustion buried deep beneath layers of steel will. "I will rest when this palace stands again." As he turned away, a soft breeze slipped through the half-open windows, fluttering the silk curtains in delicate waves. For a fleeting moment, the memory of her laughter, bold, unyielding, echoed in his mind. A light piercing the darkness, fragile yet defiant. Their alliance was unsteady, forged from necessity and haunted by distrust. Yet in her presence, he glimpsed a vulnerability he dared not name. She was both a shield and a dagger, a paradox that unsettled his tightly controlled world. A sudden flicker of movement caught his eye. A young messenger, pale and trembling, entering the chamber like a shadow fleeing a fire. "Your Highness," the boy gasped, struggling to steady his breath. "There's been another attack. The eastern supply routes, they've been ambushed. Our traders and reinforcements are trapped." The room grew colder, the weight of relentless assault pressing down like the desert sun at noon. The Sheikh's jaw tightened. With every breach, the walls of his world crumbled, and the fortress of his heart threatened collapse. "Send a rider to secure the caravans," he ordered. "No one leaves or enters without my permission." Amina stepped beside him, her presence a quiet flame burning against the darkness. "We must uncover who stands with Zara and who remains loyal." His eyes flickered to her, gratitude and suspicion entwined like reluctant dancers. "Trust is a scarce commodity," he murmured. "But in this desert of betrayal, it is the only oasis." The distant drums of the approaching raiders reverberated through the palace, a relentless beat stirring the pit of his stomach. His mind raced back to Khalid, his estranged brother, a shadowy figure whose absence frayed the ties binding his empire. "He's missing," a commander revealed quietly. "His latest sightings near the border. We can't confirm his loyalty." The Sheikh's heart pounded, a cold flame, igniting rage and desperation. The man who should have been his greatest ally could be the blade plunged into his back. "Prepare the palace for siege," he ordered sharply. "If Khalid has chosen his path, let him come. He will find no sanctuary." Amina's hand found his, fingers tightening, a silent vow forged in fire and blood. "Tonight," she whispered, "we fight for more than land and power. We fight for the soul of this emirate." The Sheikh's gaze drifted to the balcony, where the moon carved silver rivers across the endless desert. The vastness mocked him with its silence, the unyielding expanse reflecting the chasm inside his own soul. He recalled the moment when Amina first shattered his carefully built mask, not with pity, but with challenge. The wheelchair was no longer a prison, but a symbol of his battle between strength and vulnerability. His thoughts darkened as a soft noise stirred behind him, a hesitant step along the marble. He turned, meeting the steady eyes of Zara, emerging once more from shadow's embrace. She smiled, a curve cruel and cold, promising destruction, veiled as affection. "Do you feel it?" she whispered, voice dripping with venom and longing. "The palace crumbles on the brink of my truth. Your empire, your heart, both ripe for the taking." The room seemed to freeze, breath caught by the promise of ruination. The Sheikh's voice dropped to a growl, heavy with centuries of pain and the burden of inevitable war. "This ends tonight, Zara." Her eyes sparkled with terrible resolve. "Tonight is only the beginning." Amina stepped forward, the air thick with tension, as two forces collided beneath the gilded chandeliers, the fragile hope of loyalty and the sharp edge of betrayal. Outside, the first flickers of fire taunted the night, shadows twisting and dancing like ghosts of lost dreams. The Sheikh's gaze hardened, the weight of command settling upon his shoulders once more. His world was fracturing, but in its shards, he would forge a new destiny. And as Zara's chilling smile lingered in the air, the night whispered an ominous promise. The battle for the throne was no longer just a fight for power. It was a war for the very heart that beat beneath the riches and secrets of the Billionaire Sheikh. The piercing cry of a distant horn shattered the silence, a call to arms, and the unmistakable toll of fate drawing its noose tight. The grand hall, once a sanctuary of shimmering gold and perfumed air, now echoed with hurried footsteps and the harsh clang of armored boots. The distant blaze painted trembling orange hues upon the polished marble floors, while a smoky haze drifted through the open archways, staining the cool night. The Billionaire Sheikh's gaze was razor-sharp as he stood at the heart of the chaos, the weight of command pressing down on his broad shoulders like the desert sun's relentless heat. His golden eyes darted between the maps, sprawled before him, the movements of soldiers and loyal commanders, marked in urgent red and black ink. Amina's steady presence remained at his side, a silent pillar amid the escalating storm. Her dark eyes reflected both the fire flickering in the distance and the tempest raging within his soul. Though she kept her composure, the subtle tremor in her fingers betrayed the battle she fought inside. "They breached deeper than we anticipated," the youngest commander reported, his voice quivering beneath the tension. "The southern wall is crumbling, and scouts confirm enemy infiltration near the palace's eastern gate. Saboteurs inside have disabled some defenses." A bare, razor-thin smile crept across the Sheikh's lips. Control was slipping, and for the first time in years, uncertainty clawed at the armor he wore so meticulously. "Find the traitors," he commanded, his voice low but fierce. "No shadow in this palace escapes my wrath." His eyes locked on the parchment detailing troop movements. The names of loyal families, once bastions of his empire, now blurred in his mind as suspicion thickened. Among them, the specter of betrayal, Zara, loomed large like a desert wolf awaiting its hour. Amina's gaze softened as she reached out, her warm touch grounding him despite the maelstrom. "We must use the palace's secret passages. If we can cut off their supply lines inside, they'll scatter." He nodded, the faintest hum of gratitude escaping despite his practiced restraint. "Prepare the wards," he ordered. "Light the lanterns in the hidden corridors. Let them know the shadows belong to us." The scent of burnt cedar and crushed jasmine danced through the air, mingling with the acrid sting of smoke. The opulence of gold and silk now felt like a fragile veil, barely shielding the raw wounds beneath his reign. Suddenly, a sharp cry pierced the tumult. A servant rushed in, pale as a desert stone, clutching a blood-stained letter. Breathless, she proffered it without a word. The Sheikh caught the parchment, breaking the seal with fingers as steady as a desert wind. His eyes scanned the hastily written words, each line a dagger twisting in his chest. The letter detailed a conspiracy that reached beyond mere power struggles, Those he considered closest had conspired with foreign enemies. His own bloodlines threatened his throne. His throat tightened, the familiar gulf between duty and emotion widening. The empire was bleeding from within, its lifeblood seeping unseen among whispers and betrayal. Amina's voice broke the silence, low and fierce. This is no longer a battle for land, Sheikh. It's a war for the soul of your legacy. He inhaled sharply, the cold night air burning his lungs as the storm outside mirrored the war within. Bring Khalid to me, he commanded, eyes hardening like obsidian under the moonlight. It's time the past answers for the present. The name hung heavy, reverberating through the chamber. Khalid, his estranged brother, the wild card whose loyalties had always been shrouded in doubt. Now, the tides of fate demanded reckoning. Amina stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. If he returns with weapons raised, I will stand with you. If not, then the blade awaits. A flicker of something unbearably fragile crossed the Sheikh's face, a mix of longing and regret buried deep beneath his royal facade. Time has run thin, he muttered, but there is one battle I refuse to lose. His eyes met Amina's, their unspoken promise electrifying the charged air. Together, they were no longer just ruler and advisor, but allies bound by shared peril and a nascent, dangerous tenderness. The distant drums of war thundered louder, the palace walls shaking with every resounding beat. The murmurs of the court had given way to the screams of panicked servants and the rush of armored feet. And then, as if summoned by destiny, the heavy doors to the strategy chamber creaked open once more. A figure stepped inside, cloaked not in silk or gold, but in raw determination. Her eyes burned with fire and fury, an enigma still cloaked in shadows. Zara, she moved with a predator's grace, voice cold and cruel as desert night. You think you can protect your empire and your heart? The Sheikh's jaw clenched, every pulse thudding like war drums beneath his skin. The woman who had once held his trust now wielded secrets sharp enough to sever kingdoms. What do you want? He demanded, voice edged with iron, despite the storm behind his gaze. Her lips curled into a smile that could shatter empires. Not what. Who? The room fell into a tense silence, shattered only by the distant roar of conflict beyond the palace gates. With a slow, deliberate step, Zara extended a single slender hand, revealing a small, intricately carved box. You think this is just gold and jewels? Inside lies a secret, a proof that could unseat kings and destroy families. The Sheikh's breath caught, the world tilting on the edge of revelation. Amina's eyes flashed, warning and challenge flickering between them. The Sheikh reached a trembling hand toward the box, fingers brushing the carved wood. The weight of his empire, his heart, and his shattered trust rested on this fragile moment. And in that suspended breath, the distant wail of the desert horn sent a cold wave through the palace. The battle was no longer just outside the walls. It was inside, within every whispered promise and every hidden secret. The night held its breath, and the fate of the billionaire sheikh teetered perilously on the edge of shadow and flame. The distant cries of alarm faded into an eerie silence, fractured only by the crackling of distant fires, licking hungrily at the edges of the palace walls. The vast hall that once gleamed with opulence and power now resembled a fragile shell, trembling beneath the weight of impending collapse. The Billionaire Sheikh stood rigid, the glow of lanterns casting half-shadows across his stern features. His golden eyes were sharp, burning with a mixture of fury and exhaustion, reflecting the turbulent storm cloaked within his soul. Amina's breath came steady beside him, a quiet flame of resilience in the chaos. She watched him closely, noting the tightly pressed line of his lips and the flicker of vulnerability that threatened to break through. The walls had ears, and every secret, every betrayal, now felt like a blade poised to strike. The eastern supply routes have been severed, the youngest commander reported, voice trembling like the flickering flames outside. Our reinforcements are trapped, and the southern breach is extending deeper into the palace grounds. The Sheikh narrowed his eyes, the embers of control slipping through his fingers like desert sand. He clenched his fists, feeling the weight of his empire collapse just beneath his touch. It was more than an attack. It was a calculated unraveling, a web spun meticulously by unseen enemies. He recalled Zara's venomous words, whispered like a curse on the wind. The woman he once trusted, now a shadow cast long and dark over the palace's heart. Her presence was a poison that twisted his thoughts and threatened his reign. Amina reached out, her slender fingers brushing his arm in a silent pledge. We will root out the traitors, Sheikh. This is no longer a fight for territory. It is a battle for the world. Soul of your legacy. The Sheikh's gaze lifted, eyes meeting hers with a storm of emotions tangled beneath the surface. Trust and suspicion, longing and caution. Each step forward was a gamble, every breath a whispered prayer to a destiny forged in fire and blood. Prepare the guard posts, he commanded, voice low and resolute. Seal every exit, and let no one enter or leave without our knowledge. His mind spun with strategic calculations, but beneath the scheming ruler remained the man who had once cracked beneath loneliness and pretenses. The wheelchair he so often hid behind was no longer just a mask. It was a battleground of strength and fragility intertwined. Outside, the desert winds howled, carrying whispers of war beneath a blanket of stars. The jasmine and oud that once perfumed the palace's halls were now overtaken by the acrid smoke of flame and betrayal. Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps drew his attention to the heavy doors that swung open with a creak that seemed loud enough to split the night. A messenger appeared, breathless and wild-eyed. "Your Highness," the boy gasped, struggling to steady his racing pulse. "There has been another attack, this time near the northern watchtowers. The enemy advances faster than we anticipated." The Sheikh's jaw clenched, the familiar burn of rage igniting anew. His empire was bleeding from all sides. The fortress was fracturing, not just in stone, but in heart and trust. Amina's fingers tightened in his, a silent anchor amid the storm. "Every step they take is meant to break you, Sheikh, but we will not falter." He nodded grimly, but knew the truth that only nights like these unveiled. The battles fought within palace walls often cut deeper and bloodier than those waged on open sands. His thoughts darted to Khalid, the estranged brother, whose absence had long unsettled the foundations of power. His name was a shadow that haunted the palace corridors. "She has allies," the commander said, quietly, eyes flicking toward the shadows beyond the candlelight. "Saboteurs inside disable defenses, while Zara leads the assault from the shadows." A flicker of doubt crossed the Sheikh's face, mingling with the flames reflected in his eyes. The woman who had once promised loyalty now wielded secrets sharp enough to destroy empires. "Send word to bring Khalid to me," he ordered, voice low and commanding. "If he has chosen his path, I will meet him not just as brother, but as adversary, Amina's." Gaze hardened, fierce and unwavering. "We stand by you, even against Dragonfire." They were an unlikely alliance, forged in the crucible of betrayal and war, a fragile hope blossoming amid ruin. The Sheikh moved through the chaos with the practiced precision of a born leader. But beneath his measured steps lurked a man fighting to reclaim not only a kingdom, but the fragile threads of his own shattered heart. A sudden noise, a whisper at first, then a chilling voice cut through the tension. Zara emerged from the depths of shadow, her smile both cruel and irresistible. "Do you feel it, Sheikh?" she crooned, eyes glittering like midnight stars. "The palace crumbles under the weight of truths I hold. Your empire was never enough. Your heart, that is my true prize." The room froze, breaths caught like fragile glass, ready to shatter. Amina's presence stiffened beside him, her dark eyes daring Zara to step closer. The Sheikh squared his shoulders, the storm in his heart mingling with the fire in his veins. "Your gain ends tonight. Tonight is only the beginning," Zara hissed, stepping back into the darkness from which she came. The crackling flames outside cast flickering shadows, dance of fire and ruin, weaving promises of war and heartbreak. The fragile peace they had clung to had shattered completely. The Sheikh turned to Amina, their fingers brushing lightly, with a tenderness that cut through the despair. "Prepare our defenses. Tonight, we fight not only for the throne, but for the very soul of what remains." As the palace trembled and the distant drums thundered like the heartbeat of a dying world, a sharp cry pierced the air. A child's scream, raw and desperate, echoing from the depths of the emirate. The Sheikh's breath caught. Every instinct, honed by years of solitude and power, bracing for the agony to come. Because the past had returned with a vengeance, and with it, a secret that could burn everything, kingdom, trust, and love, to ashes. And in the dark silence that followed, only one truth remained clear. The heart of the billionaire Sheikh was no longer his own to command. The flickering flames outside clawed at the night, their hungry tongues licking the edges of the palace walls, as the tension inside thickened like a desert storm ready to break. The grand hall, once drenched in golden light, now felt hollow, shadows swallowing the spaces where certainty once lived. The billionaire Sheikh stood motionless, his golden eyes sharp beneath furrowed brows, absorbing every fragment of betrayal unraveling beneath his feet. Amina's steady presence beside him was the faintest flame of hope amid the gathering darkness. Her dark eyes, fierce and unwavering, met his with a silent pledge. They would face the coming tempest together. Her hand brushed his arm, a spark of warmth against the chill settling over his heart. "We must act," Amina whispered, voice low yet commanding. "This palace is no longer just stone and silk. It's a cage of lies, ready to snap." He inclined his head, senses honing in on the smallest detail. The way the scent of jasmine mingled now with the acrid sting of smoke, the distant, steady drum of chaos advancing like a storm surge. Every fiber of his being stretched taut, in the grip of command and dread. "We will root out every serpent," he said, voice a gravelly promise. "No secret remains hidden beneath these gilded halls." At that moment, a messenger burst into the chamber, breathless and wide-eyed. His presence shattered the fragile calm, footsteps echoing like thunder. "Your Highness," the boy gasped, clutching a blood-stained note. "The southern breach widens. Raiders pour like sand through our defenses. And the eastern supply route has been cut. We are isolated." The Sheikh's jaw clenched, knuckles whitening as he seized the parchment. His sharp gaze devoured the hastily scrawled report. It was no longer a battle of swords and shields. It was a war of shadows within. Sabotage that threatened to fracture the very foundation of his empire. Amina's voice cut through the mounting storm, steady and fierce. "They come for the heart of the emirate. We must hold the palace at all costs." He nodded, the weight of centuries of power and solitude settling heavily on his shoulders. "Prepare the defenders. Seal off every passage. Trust no one but those who swear on their lives." The room buzzed with urgency. Whispers of betrayal and treachery twisted through the corridors like poisonous ivy. The possibility that allies now wore masks as dark as enemies sent a cold shiver through every loyal heart. His mind flickered briefly to the name that haunted these halls, Khalid. His estranged brother's absence was a wound bleeding beneath the surface, and now his loyalty hung in the balance. "He moves near the border," one commander reported quietly, worry edged in his voice. "We do not know if he will stand with you or against." The Sheikh's chest tightened, a storm of conflicting impulses raging within. Blood bound them, but power and ambition clouded brotherhood in a desert sea of doubt. "Summon him," the Sheikh ordered, voice sharp with iron resolve. "No matter the cost, his allegiance will be decided tonight." Amina's hand found his, fingers curling tightly in a vow without words. Their fragile alliance had forged in fire and deceit, now became his strongest shield. As preparations surged forward, a quiet sound dragged his gaze to the shadows. There a figure stepped forth, Zara, cloaked in midnight silk, her smile a blade veiled in seduction and poison. "Do you feel it, Sheikh?" Her voice was a dangerous melody, thick with menace and longing. "Your world crumbles under truth's eye hold. The throne is unstable, but your heart, that prize belongs to me." Amina stiffened beside him, eyes blazing like desert stars. The room seemed to inhale sharply, tension coiling tight as a viper, ready to strike. The Sheikh's gaze locked on Zara's, fury and pain shadowing the depths of his golden eyes. "Your games end tonight." A flicker of cruel triumph curved Zara's lips. "Tonight, This is just the beginning. Before the weight of her words could settle, urgent cries echoed from the ramparts, the first volleys of war's relentless drum, announcing the siege had truly begun. The scent of burning cedar mingled with crushed jasmine, an intoxicating blend of destruction and memory. Within the turmoil, the Sheikh found himself torn between the ruler he had been and the man awakening beneath the layers of pretense and pain. His thoughts strayed briefly to Amina, resilience framed in vulnerability, the only soul who had dared pierce his carefully constructed mask. No more masks, he breathed, fingers brushing hers once again, a silent plea for strength. Suddenly, a piercing scream cut through the chaos, the shriek of a child, echoing from the depths of the emirate. The sound shattered the fragile facade of control, plunging the room into a freezing silence charged with dread. The Sheikh's heart halted, the moment crystallizing into a brutal truth. The past was no longer a distant shadow, but a living wildfire threatening to consume all. And in the flickering candlelight, beneath the weight of betrayal and the roar of invading forces, a lone, chilling whisper slipped through the dark. The throne will fall, but your heart, Sheikh, will be my final conquest. The first light of dawn brushed the horizon with hues of rose and gold, casting a gentle warmth over the scars of the night. The grand palace, though battered and weary, stood firm, a testament to the resilience forged within its walls. The billionaire Sheikh leaned against the carved marble balcony, his weighted gaze softening as the cool morning breeze whispered through silken curtains. The once impenetrable armor of arrogance had given way to a deeper strength, born of pain, betrayal, and a love tested beyond imagining. Beside him, Amina's fingers intertwined with his, their touch a quiet declaration that no fortress, no matter how formidable, could stand against the union of two souls who chose trust over fear. The air still held the faint scent of oud and jasmine, now mingled with hope instead of ash. The fires that had threatened to consume the emirate had been quelled, not by ruthless force alone, but by unyielding conviction and the power of forgiveness. In the heart of the palace's strategy room, loyalty had won battles, but it was in the quiet choices, the courage to embrace vulnerability, to face shadows within, that the true war had ended. Khalid's arrival in the early hours had marked a turning point. Once an estranged brother, lost to ambition's whisper, he had faced the truth of his treachery and offered a hand, not only to reclaim the empire, but to rebuild the fractured bonds of family. The Sheikh had met him with a gaze both stern and merciful, recognizing that even deserts bloom anew when tended with care. Zara, whose fleeting shadows had haunted the palace halls, was taken into custody not with vengeance, but with justice tempered by grace. Her schemes unraveled, revealing not just a thirst for power, but a heart wounded by resentment and unspoken pain. The Sheikh looked upon her with a sadness that spoke of once-held hopes now laid to rest. Yet it was with Amina that he found his true redemption. Her fierce spirit had illuminated the darkest corners of his soul, challenging the loneliness he had wrapped like chains around himself. Together they had torn down walls built from gold and silence, revealing a sanctuary where love could root deeply. Now, as the sun bathed the emirate in a golden embrace, the palace courtyards blossomed with fresh gardens, symbols of renewal and the promise of peace. Courtiers moved with lighter steps, their whispered doubts replaced by hopeful smiles. The air buzzed with quiet celebration rather than whispered treason. The Sheikh's voice, once a cold command, now held a warmth that rippled through those who listened. He spoke of unity, of embracing scars as marks of survival, and of building a future not on isolation, but on shared strength. Amina stepped forward, her laughter a melody that cascaded through the golden halls, sealing a vow spoken in glances rather than words. Her eyes met his, radiant with the certainty born of battles won not just with swords, but with courage and trust. In the serenity that followed, the wheelchair, once a symbol of concealment, rested to the side, no longer needed to mask his strength or vulnerability. The Sheikh rose unassisted, a man reborn, not defined by pain, but by the triumph of opening his heart. Together, they looked out over the sprawling desert, awakening beneath the dawn, a landscape vast and untamed, much like the journey that had brought them here. Promises made in shadows now basked in the light of dawn, and the empire they rebuilt stood not on fear or secrets, but on love's unshakable foundation. The curtain of night fell away, leaving in its place a tapestry woven with threads of hope, redemption, and a future carved by hands no longer clenched, but open. For the billionaire Sheikh and Amina, the road ahead was no longer solitary. It was a shared path, bright with the certainty that even amidst desert storms, love could be the oasis that endures. Under the vast, awakening sky, their story found its peace, a testament that no empire, no heart must ever stand alone again.